These are the mind-blowing government conspiracies on Joe Rogan Podcast. Episode number 2124. Episode 1931. Joe Rogan and Mike Glover discuss the Ruby Ridge tragedy.
Ruby Ridge, by the way, is seen as a success by the FBI.
Which is crazy.
Which is fucking bananas.
Tell people if they don't know what Ruby Ridge was.
Yes.
Tell them the story behind it.
So Randy Weaver, a Green Beret from Vietnam, shacks up in rural Idaho, and he decides that he wants to have a life off-grid. And the FBI, doing an investigation with the ATF, finds out that he has some kind of gun issue. And they need to do an investigation, and they need to go on site. But this is almost, it's crazy because there's similarities with our situation. You find out the guy's background. Like if you're developing a target packet on a bad guy, you would want to know the guy's background, right? That's the first thing you do because you want to assess potential risk to force, and you want to mitigate risk overall. What's his background? Green Beret, Vietnam. Oh, fuck, right? Then everybody gets all fucking crazy, right? They start going, oh, we need to find out more. So they do surveillance. They don't just do off-site surveillance. They don't do long-range surveillance. They get in ghillie suits and low crawl to his fucking cabin, right, in ghillie suits. His son and his dog are out on the property because it's his fucking property, and they discover these guys in ghillie suits. The son raises his rifle, shoots and kills one of the FBI guys, and the FBI guys kill his son. So what would you do if you own property in rural anywhere in America, you hear gunshots, and your fucking son's dead, and you don't know what's going on? And it's a bunch of dudes in ghillie suits. So he winds up locking himself and barricading himself in the cabin, and then they deploy the FBI Hostage Rescue Team, HRT. I actually interviewed one of the guys that was he was in the sniper site as a sniper for FBI HRT when this went down. So, long story short, they kill his wife as well. Shoot his wife.
While she was holding a baby.
They think, talking to one of the snipers, they thought that he was charging them into their position, but he was fake charging. He was making like a gesture like he was charging. So they got panicky and they started breaking shots off at him. I don't know if they wounded him, maybe wounded him, but he gets back inside, and so they dump the next person they saw, which happened to be the wife. So they end up barricading the place even more, and his ex-commander is the one that basically does a call out and gets him to negotiate and then eventually gets him to surrender. So all this is said and done, the FBI is found in the wrong. They sue the FBI, they win. It's a insanely controversial topic, but if you look at the FBI, two of the successes, I mean, there was guys who got awards from the FBI on that fucking mission.
Even though it was proven that they were in the wrong.
Yeah, even though it's proven they were in the wrong. Like Waco is a good example of it as well. But this is what I'm talking about. Like there's a breakdown between organizations in the government and their powers that be, and likely a tipping point of mistakes that cascaded into the catastrophe that it was. But that's the problem. I mean, we're seeing those things now. Like, what I do with my business in a free society is none of your fucking business.
Episode 1617 with Mike Baker explains China's 2049 global plan.
I'm very excited to talk to you because I had a guy on, Jamie Metzl yesterday, a scientist who scared the shit out of me, talking about China. He's talking about China. We were talking about China amassing naval power, China's taking over tech companies, and how huge they're getting and how much influence they have over their people as opposed to the way we do it.
Well, he's not wrong.
No.
He's not, I can't spot the lie in what you just said, but I mean, look, there's so much we can talk about, but if you think about it, just in the past handful of months, there was this SolarWinds hack, right, by the Russians. So the Russians go in, they hack into a company called SolarWinds. That is an IT management software company that happens to be fairly deep into government organizations, agencies, Treasury, and a variety of others throughout the U.S. government. And they're also into parts of the intel community, Defense Department, and a lot of commercial sectors. So anyway, the Russians figure this out. Now, around about December or January, Microsoft, identified this as a problem. And I think it was the head of Microsoft said, this looks like the most sophisticated attack we've ever seen. So this is December, January timeframe. And they're still trying to figure out the depth of this hack by Russians. At the same time, and going back months and months and months and months before, the Chinese had been engaged in a more sophisticated attack that, while everyone is focused on what's going on and so fully aware that we got problems, right, from nation states out there who don't like us, everybody's talking about SolarWinds, and now it's they've just now released information about the Chinese attack against Microsoft Exchange servers, running the Exchange email systems, and this thing is enormous. And so the Chinese, we've been so focused for 4 years on the Russians, and they're out there to cause us all sorts of problems. So we should be focused on them. But it's China that's the biggest problem. And so this guy is absolutely right. Jamie's right.
It was terrifying.
Yeah.
Listen to what he was talking about, the way he was explaining how they have this plan. I think he said 2049 to be the global superpower of the world and essentially take the place of what America used to be.
Yeah,
they do it their way.
And they do it their way, which means we're going to bypass all the costs and the heavy lift of research and development over the years, and we're just going to steal everything. Yeah. And they've been doing it for decades. So people think, oh, China, it's a problem. We've talked about this before. Yeah. This idea that perhaps this is just something relatively new, or it's popped up during the previous administration of Trump. And honest God's truth is, it's been going on for decades. And they decided that that's how they're going to get to the top of the food chain, is by stealing shit, because it's a lot easier to hoover up everything and then reverse engineer it. And the technology has made it even easier, right? It used to be old school. They'd go out and recruit somebody. They'd find some Chinese American working for a company here in the States. They'd appeal to sort of, you got to help the motherland, and they would. And that was the old school way of doing it. But, cyber theft it's incredible what they're able to do. And this latest attack, while they're still trying to sort out the mess, right?
So when they do this, if they get into this email server, are they targeting anything specific? Is there specific companies? Are they just like throwing a net out there and seeing what they catch?
Yes, is the answer to both of those. It looks like what happened here was that their initial point of attack, or the initial focus, was intelligence, right? So then it branched out, and it branched out very, very quickly, right, to hit everything, small companies, medium-sized companies. And that's kind of the MO for the Chinese. The Chinese regime, right, their intel operations, they've got this long vision. And they've also got the resources, and they've got the desire to hoover up everything and then sort it out later. We take, as a country, we take a very sort of targeted approach, right? We say, okay, this is a piece of information that's a priority tasking for the U.S., for our national security. We're going to go out, we're going to figure out who has access to it. We're going to develop a very sort of surgical strike to figure out how do we get to somebody who's got this piece of information. That's typically how we or some of our allies would operate. The Russians, the Chinese have always had a different approach. I mean, the Russians is less elegant. The Russians are just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, right? But the Chinese, they've got this long view, and they've also got this ability. And so in this particular attack that they're still trying to assess, that was perpetrated by, Chinese state-sponsored hackers based in China, they're just going to take everything, and then they'll sift through it. They'll figure out what they got. A lot of it's going to be just, chafe, not of interest, but they're going to find a lot of gold in there too. And they're willing to do that because they've got the patience to do it. Mm-hmm. They'll develop a target. They'll develop a potential recruit for years and years and years. Or they'll infiltrate a society or an organization, right? They'll put a student out here who's actually working for the PLA, for their intel operations, and they'll put him out as an undergrad. and then they'll go to school, and then they'll get good grades, and they'll go to grad school, and then they'll get a job, and they'll get another job, and then 30 years down the line, it may pay off. But they're willing to make that investment. So,
So we should be scared.
well, we shouldn't be scared, but we should. Yeah, I don't think we should be scared, but I think what we should be is pragmatic and understand why. For instance, I mean, there was a lot of hue and cry over the past 4 years. I can't believe I just said hue and cry.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't know. It's just like, it's old timey.
Is it?
Yeah. Oh,
Hue
by
and cry?
golly!
What is
Look
hue
at
and
me.
cry?
It's like the cat's pajamas. It's so 4 years of Trump and sort of his antagonistic relationship with China, and people were all wringing their hands in Washington, D.C., sort of the think tankers and the traditional pundits and the diplomats of the U.S., the long-term people. They're, oh, my God, we've got this adversarial relationship with China. Well, you know what? We better, right? So that's not a bad thing. So I'm hoping the current administration maintains to some degree, and we'll see what happens. They still haven't responded to the SolarWinds, to the Russian hack. Right? They're talking about it. Now they're saying they're gonna engage in several clandestine retaliatory acts. Well, it's not that clandestine because they've announced that they're going to do it. And so, but I'm hoping that they will take serious action against the SolarWinds Russian act. But they've got to, with China, they've got to maintain this posture. We've got to make it clear and understood to the Chinese regime that we're not going to put up with this shit. They're going to keep doing it, but we got to make it painful for them.
So how do you make it painful?
Well, it's the old word sanctions. You got to go with the sanctions because there's not much else. Trade wars, I know everybody hates a trade war. Not everybody, but you've got to find a way, because the problem with cyber shenanigans is that there's no real clear definition, right? We know if a country fires a ballistic missile off, we know what the retaliatory act is. We know what an appropriate response is. In cyberspace, when you're talking about warfare, coming up with a definition is very difficult and hasn't been done yet. We've got Cyber Command, right? And we're still trying to sort out what are appropriate responses, because it can escalate quickly, right? Next thing you know, they could shut down our infrastructure, right?
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Yeah. Supposedly what they did in India. Mm-hmm. So if you could explain that to people, they shut down the power grid in India, allegedly. They said they didn't do it, but apparently there was some sort of a warning about the power going out, right?
Yeah. They've done it. The Russians did it famously in Ukraine, right? Not that long ago. And China's ability to interfere in infrastructure here in the U.S. or in India or with our allies is because for years now they've been probing. There's been testing going on. We talk about. It's a good example. We talk about how in the U.S. we have 3 grids, and I think people were stunned to find out that Texas has its own power grid. Well, yeah, but it's not so much. People were like, "Oh my God, look at Texas; they're terrible," because they wanted to make it a political thing, right? Yeah. They wanted to make it sound like the reason why it's so terrible is because it's Republicans and they want their own independence. Well, no, all 3 grids are fucked, right? The East, and the West, and the Texas grids are all cobbled together over the years. So it's it's like a patchwork quilt, and they were never built to withstand physical attacks. You could drive by any substation, right? You could get close enough to pee on it, and they certainly were never designed to withstand a cyber attack. So over the years, what goes on is essentially a mapping exercise, right? Where whether it's the Russians, whether it's the Chinese, whether it's the North Koreans using Chinese capabilities, whether it's the Iranians, whomever, they're in there probing and trying to understand the weaknesses, and they're drawing up a map. Now, the reason why they're doing that is to have a game plan, right? And I guarantee you, sitting on the desk somewhere not too far from Xi's office is a playbook that says, if this thing escalates, here's what we're going to do. And if you think like it was bad in Texas, a couple of weeks ago when, the power was out, and it was bad, but think about that lasting for 8, 10, 12 weeks around the country, right? Power grid shut down. What happens? You can't transport shit, right? You can't get cash. Fuel doesn't get to the gas stations. Food doesn't get to the stores. There's, depending on the time of year, heat issues, obviously, water supplies. And that's where the next big battle is going to be fought, right? They're going to bring it to the homeland. And we will do the same thing, right? It's not like we're not doing it, because people always say, when I say something like that, well, the U.S. does it too. I think, well, fuck yeah, the U.S. does it. We better hope we're prepared.
Does that frustrate you when people say that? Well, the U.S. does it too.
Yeah, it does in a sense, because, and this is where I think, now personal opinion comes into it. Look, I spent most of my adult life overseas, and I like to think that I've got a fairly pragmatic view on things. I do admit that obviously, look, I look at the U.S. and I like to think, and I have seen on occasions, we do a lot of things for the right reason. Sometimes we don't do it properly, right? We make mistakes. Of course we make mistakes. But we try to self-correct. I guarantee you, if we're talking about the major powers out there, if we're talking about China and us, if we're talking about the Chinese regime, I'm talking about, obviously, if we're talking about the Russians, the Iranians, the North Koreans, we better hope that we stay up there, right, and are able to exert influence and leverage and control at the top, right? Because if it's and again, maybe I'm wrong here, but the Chinese don't view anything in an altruistic manner. The Chinese regime, right? It's all about self-interest. And sometimes, I'll tell you what's frustrating, sometimes is we seem to be the only country out there that apologizes, right, for that sort of thing. And so when we act in our own best interest and we go, well, we're really sorry about that, we're kind of acting in our own best interest. Well, every other nation does it, and they don't give a fuck.
Yeah, but shouldn't we be the moral high ground for the world? I think we should. I think it's nice if we do all the same shit they do. We say, sorry.
Yeah.
As long as we do all the same shit.
I guess it doesn't cost anything to say sorry.
It's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing.
We're setting a tone.
Yeah, I guess that's true. As long as we're also then at the same time acting in our own best interest.
Yeah.
Because we have to be pragmatic. If we think that somehow, look at climate change. That's obviously, it's back on the table. It's a big issue, as a major policy direction. Hey, fine, great. Who doesn't want clean energy? But to act as if China's not the number one polluter out there is insane.
Yeah,
right?
that's where it gets weird. Right?
Yeah, it gets a little weird.
Giant difference between the amount of particulates, the amount of pollution, the amount of CO2. I think they've tried hard to mitigate that over the last few years in particular. But you remember when they had the Beijing Olympics?
Yes.
And they had to shut everything down because the air quality was so bad that the athletes, it would actually be dangerous for the athletes to perform and to compete.
Episode 1459 with Tom O'Neill exposes Manson mystery.
What I would do, I would seduce people into this story and get them as
How
obsessed
would you do
as
that?
I was.
Like, pretend I'm a guy and you're trying to pitch me this book.
In the beginning, in the first years, just that the trial that had occurred, that had been prosecuted by Vincent Bugliosi, had a lot of malfeasance in it by the prosecution. I was able to document that they planted a former prosecutor on the defense team to sabotage the defense. I found out that 2 or 3 of the principal witnesses, including Terry Melcher, who played a big part in this, and we'll probably talk about that at some point, lied on the stand, suborned themselves in a murder trial. And if you commit perjury in a murder trial, you could be convicted of murder. I mean, you could be sentenced to a murder. You could get a murder sentence too because of that. So there was about a dozen of those, and none of them happened all at once.
So if you committed perjury during a murder trial, you could be sentenced for murder for the same amount of time that someone would get sentenced if they murdered somebody.
You are subject to an actual capital. You could be you could be sent to the chair.
Wow.
And the 5 people who were convicted of murder in the first trial, once, had I been around and able to prove this in the early 70s, Vincent Bugliosi and the 3 people who lied on the stand in a material way, in a very important way, they all could have been tried for that perjury and sentenced to the same, or given the same sentence that the people who had gotten the death sentence.
Now, I told you that I just got to the 11th chapter of your book.
Right.
And essentially what I'm getting so far, I haven't finished the book, but what I'm getting so far is there was some sort of a CIA program where they were, explain how they did it. They infiltrated these hippie communities And they allowed Charles Manson over and over and over again to get out of jail.
Yeah.
They knew that he was committing all these crimes. And instead of incarcerating
Well, we have to be careful
him,
when we say they.
who was they?
Yeah, we have to kind of break it all down.
Let's break it all down.
One of the other things I found out that was very significant was that Manson had a parole officer, his first parole officer, who kind of had given him a get-out-of-jail-free card for the first year after Manson was released from prison.
This was Smith?
Roger Smith,
Yeah.
And he was a criminologist in the Bay Area. Manson violated his parole the day that he was released in Los Angeles. And this is one of the, you'd think it's a little lie, but it's an important lie that Vince Bugliosi presented, not just at trial, but also in his book. At trial, it's much more serious. He changed the narrative. He said Manson had been given permission to travel to San Francisco from L.A. when Manson was paroled. Manson hadn't been given that permission. He just showed up there. They originally were going to violate him, send him right back to prison, and someone stepped in and took care of that and let Manson stay in San Francisco, and he was assigned to Roger Smith. It took about a year and a half, but through a Freedom of Information Act process, I got his federal parole file. And those were the kind of seeds of how I found out that Manson had this immunity from prosecution for the 2 years he was out of prison from 1967 until the murders occurred in the summer of 1969.
Who? I'm sorry to interrupt, but who was Smith doing this for? Who was giving him the instructions to continue to let Manson out and to continue to monitor him?
Well, that's the problem. I didn't get the whole file, and the file I got had redactions. He would report to the head office, and they would give him instructions, and then he would violate those instructions, and there'd be no repercussions for him or for Manson. For instance, Manson was arrested in July of 1967, 3 or 4 months after he got out of prison, when he was under Roger Smith's supervision, for interfering with an officer who was trying to arrest one of his first young followers, Ruth Ann Morehouse, who was 15. And he was put in jail, pled out, so he got a 3-day sentence, a new probation sentence as well, and all that was hidden. Like, it's not in Bugliosi's book. The parole officer, Roger Smith, a week later wrote to the head office that Manson was doing fine, and he actually recommended that Manson be allowed to go to Mexico and work in Mexico. And the head parole office in the United States, since it's federal, wrote back and they said, that's insane. He was the job that he was going to do in Mexico was surveying soil for insecticides. I mean, it had nothing to do with, and I have all these documents showing this.
Who was hiring him, Charles Manson to survey soil?
It was a company in Nevada, which disappeared a couple years later.
So it was a bullshit company, you think?
I believe so, yeah.
What do you think they were doing down there?
See, that's it. I don't like to speculate because I can't prove it. All I know is just the fact that his parole officer asked to send him not only to Mexico, but to the country that Manson had been deported from in 1959. The last time he was a free man, he had violated his parole then.
He was arrested in Mexico, right?
He was arrested in Mexico and brought over by the federales and given over to federal custody for it was a drug violation and some other stuff. So why would his parole officer send him back to this place 3 months after he'd been released? And how do you supervise somebody who's in another country?
Can I make a summary just for people who are like, what the fuck is going on right now? Essentially, what you're saying is that Charles Manson was a part of some sort of a program.
Yes.
And that through this program, they were using him and using, with LSD and all the members of the family, they were turning them violent. And why do you think they were doing this?
Again, this is where I got to reel it in a little bit.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
I have to be real careful about not saying anything that I haven't been able to prove.
I understand.
What I've proven is that he was getting leniency from the federal government and the law enforcement, first in San Francisco that year. The person who represented the federal government there was his parole officer, Roger Smith, the federal parole officer who was giving him leniency. Roger was also doing drug research at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, which opened in June of 1967. Manson, during that period, turned into the Manson that we're familiar with today, the monster, the embodiment of evil, as Vince Bugliosi called him, the guru who could control the minds of these followers. So he would come into the clinic to see Roger Smith. Well, he went for two reasons. It was a free clinic. It was at the height of the Summer of Love, the summer of '67. And he would come in with the women, the girls. He had about 5 or 6 followers then. And they would walk behind him. They wouldn't speak unless he spoke to them. Any command he issued towards them, they would follow. And they became very well known around the clinic. And they were there principally for Manson to see Roger for his weekly parole appointments. And then the girls were going in for STDs, and there were some pregnancies and stuff, and they were getting free treatment. That was the summer that the Manson family formed. And then they left in late '67, early '68, and migrated down to Los Angeles and became this killer cult.
It's crazy how quickly this all happened.
It's insane how quickly it
for
happened.
people who don't understand, we're talking about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about '67, Manson is in Haight-Ashbury, '69, the Tate LaBianca murders, and then the trial, and then everything else.
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
Is the speculation that Charlie Manson was basically just sort of a two-bit criminal who had spent most of his life inside the system and had been incarcerated for, half of his life, something like that?
Half of his life when he was released about age 32 in '67. All federal institutions, too, which was interesting. Even Bugliosi pointed that out in his book. First of all, his mother was a prostitute. She would get sentenced to jail for petty theft or prostitution, and she'd hand him off to her parents or other people. And by the time he was 10, 11, 12 years old, he was stealing cars, committing petty theft and stuff. So then he was sent to, juvenile detention centers and schools, reform schools, all run by the federal government. And then when he committed his first crimes as an adult, which was, again, car theft, the first crimes were car theft, but when he stole the cars, he crossed state lines, so then it became a federal offense. And he got in prison with much more serious sentences if it's a federal offense than if it's a state. And he'd do these long sentences back to back to back, and then every time he was released, he'd either violate his parole or probation. And they were actually strict with him in the 50s and till 60, when he finally went to prison for 7 years. It wasn't until 67 when he came out that all of a sudden it was hands off.
Now, what do you think happened?
In prison?
Did they find him in prison?
Again, I'll go there with you.
Okay.
And I kind of lay out.
Speculation.
Yeah, what I do in the book is, and I get criticism for this, which we knew was a good possibility, is I lay out circumstantial evidence for a case with proof of each circumstance, but when you put them all together, that's the hardest part, is linking them, finding the bridges.
Okay.
What I do is show what the objectives were in either the federal government's case through MKUltra and then other programs, COINTELPRO and Chaos, and the law enforcement's in Los Angeles and San Francisco at the time. So MKUltra began in the federal prisons experiments on prisoners. Famously or notoriously, Whitey Bulger, I don't know if you've heard about this, but a few years ago it was revealed that Whitey Bulger had been a part of MKUltra experimentation in the 50s when he was incarcerated. And after he was convicted, he was claiming that he believed that all of his violence was a product of what had happened to him in prison when he was experimented upon with LSD through these scientists. So theoretically, Manson was in the prime place where the experiments were occurring in prisons before he was released in '67 in federal institutions. They couldn't do it in the state and local
Did Manson ever talk about any experiments that took place during prison?
No,
never.
No. He. I actually have not only his federal parole file, which was the hardest thing to get because it had never been released from '67 to '69, but I also have the one prior to that from the 50s to the 60s and all the correspondence. And he would talk about these doctors coming in to examine him, and he didn't trust them and he didn't know what they were doing. And this was late 50s. And unfortunately, he never had the first names for the doctors. There were two. One of them was Dr. Hartman. I can't remember the other one's name. There was a Mortimer Hartman in Los Angeles who was one of the early psychiatrists using LSD in the 50s. Cary Grant was one of his patients. So theoretically, he could have come out of the program or the experimentation that began there. But I hate to even. I rather, and again, it's hard to kind of synopsize all this without showing all the documentation and stuff of what was going on and where he was and how everything matches up. But you'll see that when you get through chapter 11.
Okay, so I wish I got to it, but it's a rush to get to that far. So, 1967, he gets out of jail, and how long before he hooks up with this clinic?
So he got out in March of 67. The clinic opened in June of 67.
So just a few months.
Yeah, well, Roger Smith, he was actually living in Berkeley, Manson was, and he got his first follower, Mary Bruner, and then 2 or 3 or 4 more. And then Roger was the one who suggested that he go to the Haight to absorb the vibes. He thought Manson might benefit from the love and peace vibes that were happening in the Summer of Love.
Roger Smith was his parole officer in 67, but also was his parole officer before that. Was that proven?
No, Roger Smith's, his assistant, that's good, you remember that, Gail Sedalia, told me, she was his assistant at the clinic, at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic when he was running his amphetamine study in 68. She said that Roger had told her he met Manson when he was doing probation work in Illinois in the early 60s. I eventually interviewed Roger several times, and Roger denied that. And when I went back to Gail, she was shocked. She's like, I can't believe he's denying that. That was a connection. That's why Manson was able to leave Los Angeles. He was sent to Roger Smith so Roger could be his parole officer. I was never able to document that Manson had been in Illinois except for 3 days in 60 when he was brought from Mexico to Texas, and then they brought him to Los Angeles to be violated in front of the judge there. And he did spend 3 days at Joliet Prison, where Roger Smith worked, but he was there a year or two later. So that was one of the many frustrating moments where everything made sense, except for one very important hole, which was, they weren't there at the same time, at least as far as the official record shows.
So if Smith was a part of these experiments, and if Smith was also his parole officer and did know him before he did the 7 years before he got out, which is when it's speculated that Manson was possibly experimented on, and Smith might have been aware of the entire process of it and was supervising him upon his release.
Yeah.
And so that's why every time Manson got arrested, which should have just locked him up, they would just let him go.
Yeah. And Smith, to give you a little background on Smith, as he told me, he called himself, he goes, I was a rock rib Republican from the Midwest, and I came out, he went to Berkeley, to the School of Criminology to become a criminologist, I think in 65 or 66. He was getting his master's and his PhD, and his special area of study was in the beginning gangs, collective behavior and violence, and then how drugs would make some of these gangs that he had people he was working with students infiltrate to get information. Yeah, this was in Oakland in the ghettos in like 65, 66 when the Panthers were forming. Then in late 66, he decided to become a federal parole officer while he was still writing his dissertation. And he got assigned to something called the San Francisco Project, which was an experimental program run by the federal government to see how different numbers of parole clients, caseloads per parole officer were, it was about recidivism. So if you had, the lowest load was 20 clients, the largest was like 50 or 60. Were you able to you would think that 50 or 60 is going to be a lot more difficult, but it always wasn't. So Smith join that program where he's supposed to be paying much more attention and care to his clients because it's part of a special program called the San Francisco Project. And in fact, he was seeing Manson more than he was even officially supposed to. Things, it gets even crazier. After 1968, he stopped being his parole officer. He was actually removed. And he said it was voluntarily so he could focus more on his drugs and violence research at the clinic. Manson's 3 or 4 women followers got arrested in Mendocino. They had lured a couple young boys into a house, given them LSD. Manson had sent them up to Mendocino to recruit people for the family. The 4 women were arrested. One of them, Mary Bruner, had the first baby with Manson in the group. And Roger Smith and his wife, Carol, went up to Mendocino and petitioned the court to take foster custody of the child until until her case was resolved. So they were the foster parents of Manson's son. I mean, everything was irregular about this. That case is pretty interesting. So Mary Bruner and Susan Atkins, 2 women who actually killed for Manson in 1969, were convicted of contributing to the delinquency of minors, illegal drug possession, and without a trial, they pled out. And then there was what they call the sentencing phase, where a probation officer is assigned to decide whether or not they should be sent to prison or given probation, supervised probation. So I got access to their files, Bruner's and Atkins, and in the file were recommendations to the court by Roger Smith and his wife saying, these are good women, they shouldn't go to prison. Susan Atkins, who stabbed Sharon Tate, and
is that proven? Because she said it, and then
she went back and forth and back and forth. Yeah.
Is it proven? Because Tex Watson clearly was a murderer, right?
Yeah.
And so she had said that Tex did it. She couldn't do it, but this was later on.
Yeah, her
right?
first accounts were that she did it, and then when she testified to the grand jury, she said that she didn't do it. She held Sharon while Tex stabbed her.
Right.
Later in prison, she said that she did do it, and then she changed again. She'd go back and forth. But she was pretty brutal. And Mary Bruner and Susan Atkins were given probation instead of being sentenced, partially based on Roger Smith's recommendation. Roger Smith identified himself as a former parole officer, with his expertise. And he said he had known both of them for 2 years, and which was also a lie. He had only known Susan. He could have known Susan for 2 years. He knew her for about a year. He did know Mary pretty well. And he never disclosed that he was Manson's parole officer. And Manson's identified in these same files as the person who lured these women into crime, that they were his communal wives, that they would steal for him, prostitute themselves for him. And the other people that they interviewed, the probation officer argued against it, saying they're going to go right back to this guy who's down in Los Angeles and continue their life of crime, but the judge released them.
Now, they were doing Charlie's bidding, according to the record. What they were trying to do was recruit people into the family.
Yeah.
And so they would offer them drugs and sex and a lot of women and bring them to these parties. And where they screwed up is they got an underage boy who was
freaked out.
Right, and he was the son of a local sheriff.
Yeah. And he ran
said his
home
legs turned into snakes. And,
that's when they screwed up in that situation. Yeah.
And that's how they got arrested that time.
Yeah, that was.
And still they got released.
Yeah.
Which is really crazy. It's like there's so many of these instances where Charlie or members of the family were arrested, and then it seemed like the police officers who were holding them were being told, hey, you got to let these guys go.
Yeah.
This is a higher situation. This is above your pay grade.
Yeah. Well, a real turning point in my reporting was after I got access to Manson's parole file and saw that, in Helter Skelter, Bugliosi, I think, describes 2 arrests that Manson got released on technicalities, shoddy police work or something, when he should have been violated. But what he didn't do was talk about 3 or 4 more. And if you've gotten up to chapter 10, you've seen all that stuff laid out. So when I got this record, a pretty substantial record, I took it to someone named Louis Wachneck, who was a retired judge and a retired district attorney from the Valley out around here, Van Nuys, because I needed somebody with the expertise and the knowledge of how things worked. Because you have to look at everything in context. Things work out differently today than they did in 2009 or 2000 when I interviewed him. But he was there in '69 in the DA's office. I brought the documents to him, and we laid them all out on his kitchen table, and he's looking at them. And the poor guy was very sick with cancer, and he talked like this, but I had the recorder going, and he's looking at all the documents, and he's seeing this pattern of catch, release, and he's going, chicken shit. This is all chicken shit. He goes, he should have gone back the first time. He goes, they wanted him out. He said he was more important to somebody out than in. He goes, you've got to find out who it was. And I go, well, how do I do that? And he goes, you're not going to be able to. He's an informant. I go, but what should I look at? He goes, well, he was working either for local law enforcement, the federal government, the FBI, but somebody wanted him out there doing whatever he was doing. So that was important. Another turning point was a bunch of years later was when I brought similar materials to Stephen Kay, who was Bugliosi's co-prosecutor in the case.
Can I stop you for a second? So his speculation was that Charlie was an informant.
Well, and again, an informant has many definitions. Right. It's not just informing on crime. It also can be doing the police's bidding. That's where
the CIA's bidding.
Or the CIA or the FBI.
Right. Being a part of a program.
Right.
Where they're allowing this. And also there's speculation that the goal was to try to diminish the anti-war movement, and that this guy was a part of the hippie movement. And then so now people would associate hippies with violence and drugs and murder and all this horrific stuff.
Episode 1510, George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell discuss alien proximity.
This is the other paper I wanted to tell you about. It does mention aliens. So it's it is a recalculation of
Am I in trouble for having
No,
this?
no. They're not classified. It says unclassified. It just hasn't been released.
Run out of this room right now.
It just recalculates how likely it is there are alien civilizations in our solar system or our
How
cosmos.
likely? So it's about the Fermi paradox?
It's sort of
Drake
it's the Drake
stuff.
equation. So they've done this
And
years
extended.
ago about they tried to figure out how many planets are out there, how many are uninhabited. This is a reworking of the calculations. And again, I can't read it. I became a
Defense
journalist.
Intelligence Reference Document, an
Yeah.
introduction to the statistical Drake equation. So this is something that they created for the Defense Department,
Yeah,
so
so-
that they could get an understanding.
Yeah, what the baseline of our information is about all those different topics I told you about. And then this one is how likely is it that we have galactic neighbors and how close might they be?
Yeah, the key question, how far are they?
It comes to an answer. It's like 30 pages into that, but you're the first person outside the program to see it.
You
So
better drop those.
Sure this is okay?
Yeah,
It
it's
feels
okay.
like I'm going to get visited.
You're all right.
Yeah, well, how far do they think they are?
I have to dig it up for you. And again, I'm one of the reasons I become a journalist is so I don't have to do math. So
That's one of the cool things now that's happening is because of the New York Times article and really because, you had Bob on and Commander Favorite, people are talking about this in the zeitgeist. I've had more people, serious people, come forward to me in the last year of my life than ever before. And it includes soccer moms and just people that just,
Just post the documentary?
Yes, ever since the Lazar documentary, and people found out that I kept my word to Fravor and didn't tell his story. New York Times told it, and I kept all that. People started to trust me with, hey, well, he can keep his mouth shut if he needs to. Mm-hmm. People have come forward to me in droves since the Lazar movie. And of course, it's like soccer moms and people that just say, I don't want to be known. I just want somebody to hear this because my husband would think I'm crazy. Let me just tell you what happened to me and I'm out of your life.
And what are they telling you?
I mean, Joe, it's everything you can imagine from seeing craft that are right there, right in front of them, to, abduction stories, which I don't get into because it's too crazy for me. But they're reporting sightings, encounters, all UFO stuff. That's why they call me. They don't call me for other stuff, right? But also very serious people. People that have worked or do work within our military and say, I had an encounter. There was an incursion. I know George has dealt with this for 30 years. So it's just new for me that the amount of people coming forward to me and telling me their stories and giving me documents and stuff like that. I got to be careful because a lot of it's got to be bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
But a good handful of it is powerful.
A lot of
stuff.
it is, it's like bait to reel
To
you
discredit
in. To
us.
discredit you.
Do you think is that what you think, or do you
Yeah,
think it's just crazy people?
It's crazy people, and some of it might be more organized than that. The reach of your show, Joe, since when Bob was on there, I know what happened to Jeremy as a result of it. I get a little bit of the blowback because people are interested in the topic, but it's amazing how much of an impact it's had to kindle people's interest, not only in that story, but in others, on the general topic. By the way, this paper says, with a 75% probability, the nearest extraterrestrial civilization is located in between 1,361 and 3,979 light years from us. So there you go.
Wow. And the way they travel, that ain't shit.
No, that's lunchtime.
And that's such the important part of it. Remember we were talking about non-reactionary propulsion systems?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, like 10 years ago, everybody's like, okay, the universe is vast. There's probably intelligent life forms out in the solar systems in the universe, but they ain't coming here.
Right.
But then you look at what Bob said and how gravity wave amplification would, and then you look at the testimony of like Commander Fravor and how those craft move. You see how the gimbal moves.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start thinking, well, distance doesn't matter anymore. That's just us saying, physicists, we're right. Well, hold on. Physics has changed as our understanding has changed. So now we're looking at a propulsion system where distance doesn't matter. Man, that brings us all much fucking closer together if any of this is true.
Yeah, if any of this is true, there was a lot of naysayers back in the day that were quote-unquote UFO experts that had more traditional ideas of how they traveled here, like Stanton Friedman.
Episode 1614. Was Silk Road founder framed for murder?
And nobody quite knows, okay, who is it that inherited it? And there are those people who say, hey, this wasn't Ross that ordered these hits. This was like nobody knows who's behind the keys at the time anything has happened. So there are those people who completely deny, his family completely denies the culpability. And who knows? We'll never know.
That is a problem when you're dealing with corrupt cops too, right? Like they literally could have faked him doing that. We don't know. What has he denied that he called hits? Look, we should explain to people that haven't seen the film. Spoiler alert. It goes off the rails for young Ross. And at one point in time, the guy he's working with gets busted and rats him out. And then the cops are using that guy's account and communicating with him. And he orders a hit on that guy. And the guy gets to see it. And it's like, holy shit, I can't believe this. Who knows how much of that is real and how much is not. But the problem is you're dealing with corrupt cops. And if the corrupt cops wanted to frame him for something that's going to put him away for a long time, just running the website and allowing people a portal where they can do this and sell things is not quite good enough. But if you can get a guy to literally call for murder, not once but twice, then you've really got him locked up. We don't know, though. Did he deny that he called those hits?
Well, not only did he deny it, but what happened was, so to back up a step, basically the corrupt cop, in the movie, the corrupt cop at a certain point sets out to bust Ross. And then at a certain point, he's like kind of getting cock-blocked by his superiors and whatever. And so he says, okay, I'm going to rip this kid off instead. If I can't bust him, I'm going to steal the money and I'm going to use it for my own purposes. But what ends up happening is, and all of that information, by the way, the fake murder of his employee and the photographs that were taken of it, all of that stuff is true. That's all in the real story. And as we're shooting the movie, we have access to the actual faked murder photos. Where
what does it look like?
It looks like...
Is it available online? Can we see it?
Yeah, it's available online.
Oh, we need to see that right now. See if you can find the...
Curtis Clark Green murder photos, fake murder photos.
What was his online name?
Chronic Pain. Appropriately enough.
Did he look like that guy, the fat guy with the Crocs?
He does, and I love that. And that actor is amazing.
Amazing.
He was in Eastwood put him in Richard Jewell, and he was in Spike Lee's last movie. He's one of those guys.
Did he play Richard Jewell?
Yeah, he played
Oh,
Richard
wow.
Jewell, and he's fantastic.
Really good. I mean, he seemed like the quintessential internet couch monster. You know?
Working with that guy was so fun, because like again, we had we had information about the real guy, and what happened was when that guy gets busted, when Chronic Pain gets busted. In this article, it said he had a Chihuahua, and the Chihuahua's going batshit, barking crazy as the feds are kicking in the door or whatever. And we're sitting there, and I'm thinking, like, man, Chihuahua going batshit on set, that's going to screw up the dialogue. What do we do? And so I'm talking to Paul, and Paul's like, what if we give him a ferret instead? And I'm like, ferret, dude, let's go ferret, And then the other brilliant thing that Paul did was he said, all of this, like, all this online chatter where it's, you're typing on the computer and then the other person types back. He's like, what if the dude's a mumbler? So he's kind of saying this shit out loud the whole time that he's talking, and he starts talking to himself. So once he had the ferret and made the guy a mumbler, he had like the keys to the character.
Yeah, he nailed it. It was great. Everything down to the fanny pack. It was beautiful. So the dialogue between all the dialogue that you show on screen was actually real dialogue.
Yeah.
So in the movie, you have Ross calling for this guy's murder. Did you struggle with that at all? If Ross says he never did that, and he what was his theory?
Well, I think. Okay, so there's a couple of important points. One is the feds never charged him with attempted murder. They put him, Ross ended up getting sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years without the possibility of parole. And this is a crazy fact, which is considerably harsher than what El Chapo was sentenced to, right?
Jesus Christ.
And so they really, they threw the book at this guy and buried him. And
Did they offer a plea?
He was offered a deal at a certain point, and he turned it down because
was the deal?
I think it was 10 years.
Jesus Christ, kid.
I know, and this is a crazy story. So starting out with, you had asked me if I had reached out to him. So I reached out to him when he was locked up in MCC in New York awaiting sentencing. And then all the way through, he was hoping to, was waiting, the case was working its way through the appeals process. So, and then finally he was hoping that Trump was going to pardon him. And there was a big kind of hullabaloo. Okay, is Trump going to pardon him on his last day in office? And he didn't. And I was sitting there watching the news, waiting to see if he would. And I woke up the next day and I was like, man, I'm gonna look it up. And so I went on to the Bureau of Prisons website and I typed in Ross's name, and it comes up, Tucson Penitentiary, and then it said release date : life. And it just it hit me. This kid's 36 years old. He's 10 years younger than I am, and just staring down the barrel of that. And so I sat down, even though the movie's, coming out or whatever at the time, and I decide, what, I owe this guy and some fun, just human being, man to man. So I write him a letter and I said, listen, man, I've made this movie, and this is my portrait of you and my portrait of your story and of Silk Road. And it's, it's coming out into the world. But if you ever want to tell your version of this story in any form or fashion, you want to do it as a Rolling Stone interview, you want to do it as a documentary, you want to do it any way you want, you tell me, and I will be there in person to sit down with you, because I do feel like there's some kind of, I don't know, I guess spiritual contract between me and him. Like when you enter into a story like this, you're in somebody else's life in a real way.
Yeah, it's almost like we do need to hear his version of it, right? And we don't. We just, and especially when you're dealing with lawyers in a court case where it's, they're withholding some testimony if they think it'd be detrimental to his case, or, once all said and done. I wonder why Trump didn't pardon him.
I don't know. And who knows, the way it was reported that he was closely considering it. But in the kind of last days of the, chaotic end of the administration or whatever, it didn't happen. But I was, because no matter what you think of Ross's politics or what he did as a, or Silk Road even, there is this thing where I'm a believer in second chances, man. I've screwed up a million things in my lifetime, and And I feel like somebody like that hopefully has something to give the world, and isn't thrown away.
It's just crazy that they were offering him 10 years, and instead they gave him 2 life sentences plus 40 years with no possibility of parole. Like, why? It's such a disparity.
Well, I think in some way or another, it was like, this changed the drug war, right? It changed the way the drug game happened, and it changed the way the drug war was fought. Suddenly, it's like it's almost an existential threat to the drug war when it's not buy busts and hand to hand and all the street stuff that we've seen, since Nixon unleashes DEA, in '73 or whatever the year is. Suddenly, it's wait a minute. All happening online, anonymous, DHL, USPS, people are delivering it. Nobody even knows that they're carrying it. So it was an existential threat to the U.S. government, to the DEA, to the drug war. And so he got the book thrown at him.
Crazy. So what was the motivation for offering him 10 years as a plea?
I don't know. And I wonder, looking back on it, it's always kind of hindsight is 20/20, but he had been beating the system for a long time, right? He was like one dude with a laptop that unleashed this thing that kind of metastasized and went over the whole world. And he was winning for a while. He was ahead of the feds. He was ahead of the U.S. Attorney's Office. He had Chuck Schumer there, calling for his head, and yet he continued to kind of game the system and beat him by just being nimble and being able to throw his laptop in his backpack and roll on to the next location. So maybe he thought he'd be able to continue beating the system. I don't know.
God, he'd be out.
He'd be out.
He'd be out now. Full 10 years later.
Well, and the crazy thing,
tweeted this 2 hours ago. Kind of convenient timing.
I put Silk Road on the on the Tor network about 10 years ago. I've been thinking about what was going through the mind of my 26-year-old self back then in 2011. So much has changed. If only I could turn back time. Wow. So he's got a Twitter account?
Episode number 1315 with Bob Lazar caught filming secret UFO tests.
So you're working there, and while you're working there, you're under this crazy schedule. Forgive me for explaining your story, but you would get these phone calls. You would have to go to the airport at 11 p.m., and your wife started thinking that you were having an affair.
Yeah, apparently so. Now, I did give my permission to have, as part of the, security clearance process, I gave written permission to have the phones monitored and things of that sort. So they weren't doing any covert stuff. They, with any Q clearance, which is civilian top secret clearance or military top secret clearance, they go talk to friends and, places you've been, make sure you're not connected to foreign countries. But, monitoring your phone is nothing unusual. However, they insisted that, you don't even talk to your loved one, to your partner, to your wife, whatever, about what's going on. So she was essentially in the dark and didn't know the phone was being monitored. Well, part of the security clearance is that not only do you not have any connections to foreign countries and aren't a maniac, but you have to have a stable home life too. Well, she started having an affair with a flight instructor. Now, they were monitoring this on the phone, and they knew it, and I didn't. So they stopped me coming in, and their attitude at the time was, we need to see how this is going to play out, and if Lazar is going to get a little weird or anything. So let's just, hold him off from coming in and, see what happens.
And they explained this to you, what was happening?
Well, after the fact, yeah, because time kind of went on, and there were guys that were following me around, and I started getting a little concerned, going, well, shit, are they booting me out of the project? And if so, they're not just going to let me hang out at home and go get a new job knowing what I know. So as time went on, I started getting a little concerned, and I took my closest friends and just kind of got together, and I said, hey, remember that job I told you about? This is what's going on. And you don't need to take my word for it. Wednesday night, we need to all go out here. I want to show you what's going on. So I took everybody, and we went out to remember, since I had the test flight schedule, and went outside the base, out into the desert, and so everybody could see, one of the high performance tests. And, it left quite an imprint on everybody, so they knew I wasn't.
And there's videos
crazy.
of these tests, right?
Yeah, but remember, this is it's in the dark in the 80s with a big monster-sized camcorder, and you got, a bright light jumping around. But, we did video of it, but there's no, by today's standards, it's.
But is your video specifically available, the video that you took?
Yeah, well, George Knapp has it.
Is it online?
I give it down.
Do you know?
I have no idea.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I show clips of it in my film. It's online, and someone did a deep analysis of it. It was interesting to take a look at how.
Pull this microphone up to your face. Keep it about a fist from your face.
All right. To see how his video looks now, but as far as video evidence, we are talking 80s camcorders. The most important thing is the human story here. Everybody that he took up there on 3 separate occasions, they don't all like each other. They don't all talk. They all agree on one thing. They saw something that night at the exact point in time and space that Bob Lazar said. And remember, this is 17 miles south of Area 51. No one even knew really about Area 51. We're talking Papoose Lake, and they all agree. They saw something that night they had never seen before, and they've never seen since, right when he said it. So that's one of the 6 things where I'm like, how did he know? You can dismiss him. I tried to dismiss it. But some things we can't get around, and there's about 5 or 6 of them. How did he know about those?
If Jamie wants to find that video right now, what would he look under?
Bob Lazar, UFO, S4, Area 51, just kind of like that. So it's like the S4 UFO video, Bob Lazar, and a guy does an analysis, but you're analyzing these 80s videos.
Right.
He from the very beginning, Bob never said, I have proof of my story and I'm going to tell the world. He said at the very beginning, I cannot prove my story. That's not why I'm telling this. George Knapp convinced him to tell people, and he lived through it, and I didn't believe it either until I talked with George.
Okay, so you film this test flight, one test flight, and then you get caught.
Actually, it was, I think, the 3rd time, because we went out there the first time. Everybody saw it. Everybody was amazed because it did some radical maneuvers, and everybody had a lot to say about it.
Maneuvers that I've seen the video. It doesn't. I don't think there's something we have now that does that.
No,
in terms of like a human piloted craft. I don't know, obviously, with the government.
No, it's impossible. Nothing can move like that. And remember, we didn't start filming from the very beginning. We were waiting for something, to happen. The craft took off and then came flying at us, stopped, turned at a right angle, flew back, and then, after it did some, amazing stuff to get the camera, and then we started filming. So it doesn't have all of it on there; it just has some.
The way I describe it to my friends, and they said, "What does this look like?" I said, "Take a laser pointer, and then have a wall, and then move it around the wall." Like, how it moves around the wall? It doesn't seem like it has anything to do with inertia or physics, or it's not impeded in any way by the atmosphere.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
You're essentially separated from reality, as crazy as that sounds, with being encased its own gravitational envelope. Inertia is not going to affect it. And, this is how some of those recent sightings with Commander David Fravor, I'm sure you've heard of the Tic Tac UFO. He describes exactly, the thing operates exactly the way I was describing. That's why he was interested to talk to me. But we saw this, and, on the way home, it's like, hey, we got away with it. We should try it again the next test flight date. So this became a thing to do. And I think it was on the 3rd time that we got caught. We started becoming a little careless. I think we took a motorhome out there. And, it was like the stupidest thing you could possibly imagine.
Started tailgating.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And
again, you're in your 20s.
Yeah. And, what was funny was we went out there, and my friend Gene Huff and I were leaning on the front of a vehicle. And just for some reason, we just started talking shit. Like, I hope they realize that, I don't remember what we were saying, but, that it's something about attacking the base or something along those lines and stealing the craft or something like that.
Something crazy.
And then about 20 feet in front of us, we see a little green light fall on the ground and roll to us. And unbeknownst to us, now it's pitch black, you can't see your hand in front of your face. There were a bunch of guards standing right out there, and they had a night vision scope where they were like from here to the wall looking at us, listening to us, and the guy dropped it, and the scope rolled over to us, and you could see the green screen. We turned the lights on, and all these guys are there. So it was...
Whoa.
Yeah. So we did incredibly stupid stuff and got caught, as we should have.
So when they catch you and they bring you in, then what happens?
Well, I went in for debriefing. The following day, I went to Indian Springs Air Force Base, which is kind of a defunct base that they used to use at the nuclear test site. And this is when they brought out the transcript of the phone call with my wife. And, they sat me down and we said, when we meant to keep the secret, we meant you can't tell your friends, right? And it just being sarcastic and trying to. Mm-hmm. And then they got real serious. But this is where they, took the transcript out and were reading me what my wife and, our friend were talking about. And I don't know, it was a hard time.
So what happens from there? What do they do with you? Why don't they arrest you?
I don't know. I don't know why. I'm not sure exactly they knew what to do, but they did let me go that night, and I went home. And this is kind of when the most stressful part started.
Because you're realizing that you're being monitored 24/7.
Now I know not only am I being monitored, but now I know I'm in trouble. And it wasn't a short time after that I contacted, at that time, the only investigative reporter I had heard of in Las Vegas was George Knapp. And, told him some of the story because I had no idea what the hell was going to happen at that point.
So George Knapp tries to dissect your story, tries to find holes in it, tells it, puts it online, and makes everybody aware of it, and that's how I found out about it.
Yeah, to make a long story short. Yeah.
What happens, to really make a long story short, what happens from there on? I mean, do they contact you and say, hey, Bob, it's probably a good idea if you shut up?
Oh,
Did they try to label you as crazy? Was there...
There were a lot of things that happened at, between that point. I'm leaving out a lot of stuff to fill in the story. We'd have to go back to Los Alamos and well, I really don't want to talk about that. The
top secret weapons stuff that you were working on.
No, I'm talking about the 115.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I have to think about how I'd...
What is the problem with this?
I don't want to get myself into more trouble by admitting something. So I just have to dance around a couple.
He was rated just during the filming of the movie. People thought it was
the movie's great, by the way.
Thanks, Joe.
And it's on Netflix right now if anybody wants to check it out.
Episode 1997 with Dave Smith on leaked Pentagon documents.
The leaked document. Like, what was your thoughts on that? Because the whole thing was crazy that this guy had access to it. And I guess he was showing it to his friends or something. Is that what it was?
Well, it seems that way. A lot of people kind of were criticizing the guy, and they were kind of saying like, well, look, this guy's no Ed Snowden. I mean, he didn't take this to Glenn Greenwald at The Guardian to have him vet through it and properly disclose it. He's bragging to friends on a Discord server or whatever. And essentially that seems right to me. That does kind of seem like what happened. But again, that's not the interesting story here. The interesting story isn't what this guy's deal was or what his motives were. The story is oh, the government's lying to you again. And also that they have this information that they claim is so vital, that it's so horrible he leaked it. And yet you're so reckless with it that, it's it's funny. I remember Glenn Greenwald making this point when people would talk about people were at the national security apparatus or whatever would be talking about how reckless it is that Snowden just gave all of this information out. And you're like, well, then weren't you pretty reckless too? Because if this information's so vital, you didn't even know it was gone.
Right.
They didn't even know it was gone until The Guardian published it. And then they were like, oh, I guess this guy took all of our documents. What did
the documents say?
Well, just right before that, one of the other real interesting thing is that they came out so a couple days after the leak first was getting reported, the Reuters had a piece, an article where they had 3 high-level U.S. officials under anonymity said that, you'll never believe this, Joe, it had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. And so isn't it just amazing that they'll go, and then 2 days later, they completely gave up on that and went, let's just smear the kid who did it. Forget all that stuff. There were some interesting revelations from the documents. Things like there are NATO and U.S. military embedded in Ukraine, assisting them basically, which is pretty dangerous.
Western Special Forces operating inside Ukraine. One document dated 23 March refers to the presence of a small number of Western Special Forces operating inside Ukraine without specifying their activities or location. The UK has the largest contingent, 50, followed by Latvia, 17, France, 15, and the US, 14, the Netherlands, 1. Western governments typically refrain from commenting on such sensitive matters, but this detail is likely to be seized upon by Moscow, which has in recent months argued that it is not just confronting Ukraine, but NATO as well.
And essentially, look, this was the, I think when Putin ultimately decided to invade Ukraine last year, I think basically what he concluded was that they did it. They brought Ukraine into NATO. Even though Ukraine is not an official NATO country, at this point, they backed the coup that overthrew the democratically elected government under Yanukovych. They poured weapons into the country, and they were doing joint training exercises with NATO and the Ukrainian military. And I think Vladimir Putin was basically like, we told them this was our brightest of red lines, and they crossed it. And I got to do something. Now, I'm not saying he should have done this. There's other things he could have done. There's lots of things. I don't know exactly. You get creative, but he could have cut off all natural gas to Europe. He could have dropped a nuke in the ocean. He could have done something before he did this, But he basically concluded that Ukraine is de facto a member of NATO. And if you look at the way we're responding to this whole thing, he's kind of right. We're backing them all the way because they were invaded. That's what we're supposed to do to a NATO country, And so this is bad that this comes out. Although I got to say, I'm surprised to some degree how much, if the Nord Stream bombing didn't, do it, I don't know if just some special forces being embedded there is going to create some big escalation.
Episode 1349 with David Sinclair on raw milk bans.
I don't have good access to raw milk. Where do you get it?
Like a health food store, like Sprouts or something like that.
I think, try that.
I think they have it at Erewhon. Maybe Whole Foods has it. It's really tricky because it's not even legal in some places to have whole milk. In fact, people have been arrested and just locked up for having whole milk. Yes. Google that because it's pretty preposterous. When you think about how easy it is to buy whiskey, right? And then think about people buying whole milk. That whole milk is apparently for some people. It might have just something to do with skirting FDA regulations and things along those lines. It gets very complicated for sure. And then the reason for homogenization and pasteurization is obviously health, right? We're trying to protect people, and also it's shelf life. It stays on the shelf longer. Mm-hmm. But I've definitely bought it.
Yeah, there's a small, a small food group, Raw Food Club. They were raided in 2011 for sharing raw milk or something.
The latest raw milk raid, an attack on food freedom? Federal agents organize a sting operation against a tiny raw milk buying club and ignore more serious food safety concerns. Yeah, like Twinkies. How hard is it? Look, you can, I'm sure, get food poisoning from spoiled milk, right? But isn't spoiled milk yogurt ultimately, right?
Well, here's what I do with food. If it stinks, I don't eat it.
Good move, bro.
Yeah. And I think milk, you smell pretty quickly if it's going bad.
Look at this. Involved unwashed room temperature eggs. The other count, unwashed room temperature eggs, a storage method Rossum members prefer. By the way, when we had chickens before these nasty coyotes killed all my chickens, we would store our eggs at room temperature. We'd put them in a bowl. We would wash the outside of the egg and put them in a bowl, and they would sit on the counter, and I was eating them all day long. And nothing happened. Healthy as fuck. Asians dumped gallons of raw milk and filled a large flatbed with the seized food, including coconuts. We seized your fucking coconuts. Watermelons and frozen buffalo meat. What the fuck? Like, what is this, agents? Who are these assholes that are getting paid government money from our taxes to steal frozen meat? Jesus Christ. Christopher Darden, who helped prosecute O.J. Simpson, appeared at Stewart's arraignment just in time to lower his bail. All right, so Christopher Darden's out there helping people. Whatever. Gross. It's just I mean, I don't think you should, we should somehow or another find out whether there's a way to test if this raw milk is fresh enough for people to eat. But if it is, people who live on farms have been drinking raw milk since the beginning of time. It's normal and healthy. It tastes better. It's way easier for you to digest. Like, I get a little weird when I drink, like, straight. Like, if I have milk and cookies, which I love, I don't know what, maybe it's the cookies or the milk. I might be full of shit here. Now that I'm thinking about it, the cookies might be what's messing with my my stomach. I don't think so, though, because you get this feeling from the milk, like, it's probably both. Now that I think about it, it's both.
Well, in France, you get the unpasteurized cheese.
Yes. My friend Jean-Marc used to bring it back in his luggage. He would smuggle back for raclette. You know what that is?
Yeah.
It's like a dish that he would make with meat and cheese.
Yeah, that's good. But I don't hear the French dying in droves either.
They seem to be healthy as fuck, and they're not as fat.
Right.
Yeah. Their bread is better. They have bread that is not from they don't have modern wheat. So the wheat that they have is not engineered to have more complex glutens and higher yield like we do.
Episode number 1222 with Michael Shermer on Space is Fake.
You can fuck off. I'm not getting in that thing. It would take a few years before I'm willing to climb into that sucker. But
so the other problem with conspiracies, just to get back to that for a moment, is the problem of anomalies. What do you do with anomalies? This is true in all science. No theory explains every single thing that's out there that we want to study. There's always going to be some like quirky thing that the main theory here that explains all these things here, it doesn't account for that. Mm-hmm. Okay, what do we do with that? Well, my joke is you assign it to a grad student. They let them figure it out. But what outsiders mistake is that, well, my theory explains this little anomaly, so therefore it should replace this theory. And so people like Neil and Sean Carroll, Lawrence Krauss, Michio Kaku has like 2 web pages. One, he has a link on his web page. If you have an alternative theory of physics, go to this page. So they go there, and it has, your theory has to explain all of these things over here that our theory currently explains, and your, whatever your said anomaly is. And of course they can't. So it's not that scientists are dogmatically closed-minded to the anomalies. It's that we can't explain everything, and you don't have to do anything with that. Just leave it there. Maybe eventually they'll pile up, and there'll be a new theory, like with Einstein's relativity. Okay, there's enough anomalies here, like the orbit of Mercury and a few other things, and so we have to modify Newtonian physics a little bit. Okay, that happens. But for the most part, like, and so conspiracies are filled with these things. Like the moment something big happens, you go back and, okay, but there's this weird thing here. How do you explain that? I don't know. We don't have to explain everything.
Do you know that there's a growing movement that think that the space is fake?
Space is fake. No, this is different than the flat earthers.
Google hashtag space is fake. Oh, no. Hashtag space is fake is people that are so fucking stupid, the flat earthers kicked them out.
Oh, my God.
For real. Flat earthers kicked out the space is fake people. Space is fake is,
oh my God,
they're the most skeptical.
So what would be the upper atmosphere? Would be the edge of the universe?
It's all bullshit. It's all fake.
That's the end.
And it's tied in some weird way to religion, which is really interesting. Because even the flat earth people, there's a tremendous amount of them that are extremely religious. And they talk about the firmament, and the Bible,
right.
and the Bible, and that this is this is what's really going on, is that they're trying to keep us from the knowledge that God has created this place as a very special place.
Right.
And so by pretending that it's round, they somehow or another are controlling us. They're
Right.
thinking that we're not exceptional and we're
Oh,
not
boy.
lucky. Space is fake.
They're using a video from that Ryan Gosling's movie he just made about Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon.
Yeah.
Just be like, this is look, here's proof. This
Oh,
is how
I
they
see.
fake
This
everything.
is faked.
It's like they're making a movie.
Because
they're literally making
the way they made the movie that's evidence that it's fake.
because he's wearing it. I don't know if maybe this person doesn't recognize that as being Ryan Gosling right there. He's got a NASA suit on.
Maybe it's just a troll account. This is
it
how
could also
NASA
be
fakes
that, yeah.
everything. This is the video I was talking about, guys. Now you know it's all a big act.
Hat flatter.
Hashtag
You should,
space is fake. Click on space is fake, though.
This is what I'm on. I'm on the whole.
Yeah, but I
thread
mean,
of-
click on it because there's a bunch of other
Yeah, no,
ones.
I'm on that thread.
There's a tremendous amount of people that literally believe that space is not real.
Google
No,
a video of how Buzz Aldrin and how he deals with the no moonies that we never went to the moon. There's a video of Buzz Aldrin punching a guy.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
That guy, I had dinner with that guy.
You did?
The guy he punched. Yeah. I was a firm believer that we never went to the moon.
You
for a
were?
long- Yeah. This is what happened. I watched that Fox documentary,
Yep.
The Moon Conspiracy Theory,
Yeah.
Did We Go? And I was like, holy shit. Because it was on television. And this was 96, 97. I remember I went to work and I told everybody, you got to see this documentary. It's crazy. We never went to the moon. And I watched that one and I watched this guy's, what is his name?
Bart Seibel.
Bart Sibrel.
Oh, yeah.
So I had dinner with him. He absolutely believes that we never went to the moon. 100% believes it. I don't know if he still believes it. I think he's like a cab driver or something now. He was involved in the news or local television or something like that, back where he's from. Then he released a documentary called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. And in his documentary, one of the things he did have is some really interesting footage of the lunar module where it looks like they're faking a shot of them being really far out, but then when they remove the covers from all the windows that were inside the lunar, not the lunar module, what is the one that the orbiter? It really looks like they're in low Earth orbit. And this is like the main thing pointing to that, like they couldn't get out of low Earth orbit. Then there was also the fact that they lost all of the telemetry data, which was the binary, the ones and zeros that show the position of the lunar module at every stage. There was a bunch of different things. The fact that no one wanted, especially Neil Armstrong, he became a recluse, never wanted to talk about it. You go and watch the press conference. The press conference, they look very shady. Look like they're completely full
but Buzz
of shit.
Aldrin's not like that. He
Well,
talks to everybody.
He was a drunk for a long time, though. He was very depressed and became an alcoholic after the moon landing. And the idea is that
Oh, I see.
in conspiracy circles, from talking as them,
Right.
the idea is that he got over it after a while and needed to make a living, and now he talks about it constantly.
Okay, all right.
But Neil Armstrong never did. The thing that's compelling is that there's some faking going on. If you look at that doesn't mean that they didn't go to the moon. That just means that someone got a hold of some photographs and faked it. And it's way more likely that there was more of that going on than that people didn't actually go to the moon, right?
In MMA show number 12, Joe Rogan and Ben Askren discuss conspiracy theories, specifically the moon landings.
There's no video evidence of what hit the Pentagon.
Well, there's a video of something. I know there was one hidden camera thing or security camera video that was released, but what they did have is all sorts of pieces of aircraft all over the fucking lawn.
Yeah.
I mean, in a blown up building and a plane that's missing and all the people dead. Like, I'm going to guess it was a plane.
Yeah.
I think people look for conspiracies and everything because it's exciting.
Well,
There's something
I mean,
stimulating about it.
There is, but then obviously, I know that you don't believe that everything we're told is the truth right away, right? I mean, if
Not
we
at
go
all.
to something like Gulf of Tonkin incident,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Perfect
that's been
example.
proven to be false, or the fact like the banana republics, right, where Dole asked us to go take out one of their dictators because they were going to nationalize all the banana plants in that country.
Yeah.
I mean, those things have been now proven to be
Yes.
totally factual, that the United States government went and did that stuff. So the fact that, and in 1960s or 70s, those things were reported the opposite, right?
Right.
So we can't obviously take everything that we've been reported as truth.
Well, there's definitely been conspiracies that have been put together and executed. And these conspiracies have greatly affected the American people. The Gulf of Tonkin's a perfect example. Another one that they were planning on was Operation Northwoods.
Yes.
Operation Northwoods was one that they were planning on blowing up a drone jetliner, blaming it on the Cubans. They were going to arm Cuban friendlies and have them attack Guantanamo Bay. They were going to sacrifice American troops and American lives. And they were going to do this in order to get people to be excited about a war with Cuba.
Yeah.
This is a real thing that was signed by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It was released by the Freedom of Information Act, and it was vetoed by Kennedy. So we know that there were people, at least in 1962, that were planning on shit like this.
Yeah.
So that's a real thing. And the idea that that just went away and no one does that anymore.
It's crazy.
I don't believe that. I think there's most certainly evil people in all fucking sectors of life.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's good to have an open mind, but there's also a lot of fucking conspiracy loons that look for...
And they get consumed with
Yeah.
it. That's the
Yeah.
issue. They get consumed with nothing that I've been told is true.
Yeah.
Which is obviously, like I said, the one far end of the spectrum. And anyone who's that end is crazy also.
Yeah, there's people out there that think the satellites are fake, and they think that
The moon landing
dinosaurs
one
were not real.
and then the Earth is flat is the ones where I just shake my head like...
The moon landing one's my favorite.
Really?
I got balls deep in that for years. I was completely
So you think they
convinced.
did not go to the moon?
No, I don't think that anymore.
Okay.
But you know what I think now? I think I don't know.
Okay.
But I do think that it is one of the more fascinating conspiracies that between 1969 and 1972, they had seven attempts, 6 of them successful. Well, they went to the Apollo 13 was the one that they didn't apparently make it, and they had to come back. But that was the only time in history that a human being has been more than 400 miles above the Earth's surface. All the space station missions, all the space shuttle missions, all that stuff is
Within orbit.
Yeah, it's low. It's all very low. They went 260,000 miles out and back into deep space, but they had never even flown a chicken out there and see if it comes back alive. Like we really didn't.
Really?
Yeah, no.
I'm not into the space travel one, so...
I mean, they did a couple of flybys, like
Yeah.
they went around the moon, early before they landed on the moon.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, without unmanned drones like what we have on Mars and things like that, we've never really sent a living thing out through the magnetosphere, through the Van Allen radiation belts, into deep space. Have it, I mean, there's all these possibilities of solar flares and anything that would have killed them instantly. And they just did that. And then we haven't been able to do that since 1972.
That's the one where
Yeah.
I've never looked into the moon landing. I think it's kind of goofy, right?
Well, it's
But-
weird. It's a weird one.
Why have we never gone back? It's been 50. Surely our technology is far superior to what it was in 1969, right?
The technology is far superior, except that they're not using that technology for manned space travel into deep space like that and to go into the moon. So it's like our technology in all these other areas is superior, but they haven't really worked towards that because they haven't been funded. So the big issue is, in many ways, it's money. Right? It's there's how much money is there in going to the moon, and it's also very risky to send humans out there. I mean, we're talking about manned missions to Mars now, which may or may not take place by 2030. They're talking about doing that, but it's way cheaper and safer to send robots out there. Like, why risk human lives? It's
They
it's
put
very
robots
retro.
on the moon, right? And they put robots on Mars.
Yeah.
The rovers.
The
stuff.
rovers on Mars are that's the most interesting because they're sending these really high resolution photos of the surface of Mars, and they're running tests and checking for biological life. It's really, really interesting stuff. But between 69 and 72, when they did all this stuff, I mean, there's the technology back then was nothing compared to what they have now in terms of calculations and computers and it's also there's unquestionably some stuff that whether it was images or video that was faked. And I think...
Really?
Yeah.
So like I said, I never looked into this at all.
Gemini 15 is the big one because there's a photo of Michael Collins. It shows him in deep space, and they use it as a press release saying that he was on a spacewalk when it was really an image of him from a test run where there was all this stuff in the background, and he was on this harness, and they just blacked out the background and tried to sell it as him being in space. See if you find that. Michael Collins, what do you...
I was looking up how much it costs to send somebody to space.
Oh, it's insane.
$70
Well, now
million
there's these.
70 million
for a NASA astronaut to fly on a Russian shuttle.
Well,
Called
there's all
Jeff
these
Bezos.
private guys trying to
Yeah.
sell tickets to places. I mean,
Yeah.
Bezos is trying to do it. Musk, obviously.
But that's
I think
space. That's just low Earth orbit. That's still inside 400 miles.
none of them are trying to go anywhere.
No. Well, they might in the future.
Well, Branson.
Well, I think that's all same thing. It's all low
Okay.
Earth orbit. But they are talking about future visits to the moon and to Mars. But a lot of times I feel like when they say that, George Bush Sr. said that they were going to go to the moon, back to the moon again. In like fucking, when was that? 1990 or whatever the hell that was? People have always said we're going to go back to the moon, but we haven't been back since 1972. Does that mean that we never went? No. But then it gets weird when you find out that Wernher von Braun was a fucking Nazi.
Who?
Wernher von Braun, the guy he was the head of NASA. He was the guy who organized the moon landings, and he was the head rocket guy. That guy was a legit Nazi. Like, he was wanted by the Simon Wiesenthal Center said that if he was alive today, they would prosecute him for crimes against humanity. They would hang the 5 slowest workers every day in front of his Berlin rocket factory. Oh yeah. No, 100%. I mean, that's what they did. What they did was they took this thing, it was called Operation Paperclip, where when we won World War II, they took all the top Nazi scientists and they secretly brought them over to America. And they did it on the down low so that no one would think like, hey, why do we have a guy named Wernher von Braun running the American space program? Well, it's because the Nazi scientists were insanely advanced. So the question is like, well, were they really Nazis or were they scientists that were under the boot of the Nazi administration? I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not around then.
Yeah.
But I do know that these are the people that were the head engineers and the people that designed it. Wernher von Braun himself was saying how impossible it was just years before they did the moon landing and years before Operation Paperclip, that it was impossible to go to the moon or how ridiculously impossible it would be. But technology advanced from then to when 1969 happened to when they did it. I stopped saying that we never went to the moon because I really don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. And that's a big part of understanding these conspiracies. It's like,
hard.
You have to really know, how much do I know about rocketry? How much do I know about aerospace? Zero.
Yeah.
So if I'm running around saying I don't believe people went to the moon, what is it based on? It's based mostly on ignorance, speculation, and the excited feeling that comes with trying to uncover a conspiracy.
Sure, but I think you do have to be a little bit discerning on what you hear, but it is frustrating, and that's where a lot of these conspiracy guys they think they know more than they do, because you have to come to the realization that you're probably never going to know the real answer with a lot of these things. Very likely. I mean, some of them come out many years later. We're talking about like Gulf of Tonkin, right, or Operation Northwoods. Many years later, it comes out, but there's a good likelihood that I'll never know the truth on stuff I read a lot about.
I think with the moon landing, it's way more likely that we went to the moon, but that some of the footage is fake. And I think they probably did that because it's incredibly difficult to film things on the moon. And I think they filmed some stuff in test runs and then tried to pass that stuff off.
Should have brought their iPhone.
They didn't have it back then. They had these cameras that they had in the center of their chest. I think
What if they would have been taking a selfie on the moon?
Yeah, the
Snapchatting it.
You'd have to take your suit off and then you would die. They didn't have a camera that you could put in front of you.
Well, maybe they have one of those clicker buttons they could have with their big gloves on, and they put the thing out and then they click it, and then boom, Snapchat, Wi-Fi on the moon.
Well, that's what they said. Well, it was that they did it remotely. That's how they captured the video of the lunar module leaving the surface of the moon and panned up and watched it go. That they did all that remotely. It's all. There's some squirrely footage. You ever see the video of them jumping around? It looks like they're on trampolines.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Like they're just bouncing straight up in the air. You're like, well, what the fuck is that? How come the physics are different in different flights? Like in some of the flights, like Apollo 11, they're barely getting off the ground.
Isn't it one where they're walking, but they're kind of going, like that?
Well, there's ones like that, and then there's also ones where they fall down. It looks like they're getting yanked up by wires. I think it's entirely possible that some of that stuff was faked. But I think it's way more likely that they actually went to the moon than they didn't. But it's way sexier to think that they faked the whole thing. It's fun. It's fun to think they faked the whole thing. That everybody was quiet about it, and Neil Armstrong gave this real cryptic speech on the 25th anniversary of the moon mission, saying that there are hidden truths. What is the exact quote that he said? Some of the great truths that could be revealed. Removing some of truth's hidden layers. Like
so what if he was giving it away?
It was real cryptic. It was like, what do you? Let's see if you can find it.
I got the video.
Play the video.
He might have been giving it away.
Well, it seemed if you were a conspiracy theory, this would give you a rock hard boner. Because listen to this.
Neil Armstrong made a rare public appearance. Next generation of taxpayers.
We have no. Just play the whole thing so you don't confuse everybody.
In 1994, Neil Armstrong made a rare public appearance and held back tears as he spoke these brief cryptic remarks before the next generation of taxpayers as they toured the White House.
Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you we say we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
What the fuck does that mean? I mean, what? You're supposed to say, "Yo, I went to the moon, bitch." You're not supposed to say breakthroughs. That
maybe he's giving it away.
Truth protective layers. Like I don't even understand what that means. The press conference is one of the more fascinating things. If you watch the press conference, again, I was balls deep in this stuff for years. The press conference from 1969 when they returned from the moon is one of the most cryptic, weird things you'll ever see. These guys look like they just stole something and they're being questioned. I've never seen a video where people look like they're more full of shit than that video of the press conference from 1969. It's weird, man. It's weird. They're like fidgety and looking nervous, like they're getting away with something.
So they didn't do it then?
They might have done it. They might have been forced to say some things that they didn't want to say, and that could be part of it.
Absolutely.
They could have done it. But there's a lot of weirdness with the moon landing.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you wanted to have like a conspiracy that to wrap your head around that's exciting, it's one of the best ones.
Really, but who benefits from it?
The United States government did because it showed military superiority over the Russians, so we were able to do that.
Sure.
It also, it was the Nixon administration. People were just flat out full of shit.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they were just lying to people left and right back then.
That's government, though.
Yeah, but even more so then because it was unchecked. There was no media.
Social media.
Yeah, there's nothing that would expose them for this. And this stuff, they would air it on TV once in 1969. You never see it again unless you watched it on film. There's no YouTube where you can go back and watch the astronauts on trampolines video. That's my favorite one. You watch that and you go, what in the fuck is happening there? These guys are bouncing up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are they doing that? Like, they never did. If you watch Apollo 11 when they were moving around on the surface of the moon, it's just like they're moving in slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to whatever it was, like Apollo 14 or 15 when they were doing the trampoline thing. They're fucking flying through the air. Have you seen it?
I've not. I know. I've never gotten to the moon thing. The flat Earth thing is ridiculous.
Watch this. And like their feet are hidden. Look at this. Watch these guys bounce up in the air. It's like they're on some sort of wire, like they're being yanked up into the air.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what the fuck are they doing? And they're playing, like falling down, and it's very weird. But it could have been that they were really on the moon, and these guys were fucking cowboys and yahoos, and they wanted to bounce around.
Oh, you were posting those videos.
Yeah, I posted those videos back in the day. Yeah, I had a debate on Penn Jillette's radio show with a guy who's an astronomer, and he wasn't willing to admit a lot of stuff that was a fact, like the fact that Werner von Braun was a Nazi.
Well, why does the flag look so still there?
Well, the flag had a wire, first of all, on the top of it that stiffened it up to make it. But there's videos of the flag moving in a non-existent breeze, which is weird too. And they try to make some logical explanations for why the flag could be moving in a vacuum, and some of it makes sense, but some of it doesn't. Like the wires one is weird. If you watch them fall down, like go to that one right there, Jamie. If you watch, like sometimes they're falling down, and when they're falling down, it looks like they get yanked back up. But I think it might not have been real footage. What they might have done is use some test footage, like right there, Jamie, right there. Let it go. Like homeboy falls down, and then it looks like he gets yanked back up. Look at this. Whoops.
Oh, he did not. That's
Like, what
not
is
him
that?
standing up.
Yeah, what is this?
That's not
Look.
him standing up. You can't stand up like that.
Right, but you're on the moon. Okay,
No,
so you realize you're in
no.
1/6 Earth's gravity.
But there was nothing to make him go like this.
Exactly.
Right? You can't get
Right.
up without.
Exactly.
Now we go back to MMA because that's
Yeah.
what these freaking folk style wrestling's the next generation of MMA.
Yeah, watch
Because
this
you have
again.
to turn to your base to get up. You can't look at. There's nothing on the ground. How's he going to get the momentum?
He's
to
getting
go?
yanked up. Like he would have super abs. He would have to be like a
No,
break
you
dancer.
can't because. Okay, maybe a breakdancer. Maybe a breakdancer. But you can't get up without putting a base down, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really weird.
It's
I
very
never saw
weird.
it.
Watch it again. Watch him get yanked up.
Yeah, he's got no base.
Yeah.
It almost seems like that little piece is played in reverse.
Oh,
Yeah,
it almost
but-
does. Yeah, it almost does.
Yeah, that he couldn't stand up like that.
But the thing falls down right afterwards,
Yeah, I
so
know,
it wasn't
I know,
in reverse.
I know.
I think it's entirely possible that some of the footage was bullshit. But it doesn't mean that they didn't go to the moon.
Yeah.
It means that overzealous people in
And he only
the
had one
press.
foot on the ground there too.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's true. Look at this. Watch.
So he stood up
Woo,
like.
look at that. It's ridiculous.
He can't do it.
What? His right foot's down, his left foot's up, and he just goes straight up in the air. It is
that's
crazy.
That's fake.
But I've never been in 1/6 Earth's gravity, and neither of you.
No,
so maybe it's
Joe,
easier
it's
to
fake,
do.
dude. You can't stand up like that.
You think that's
You
fake?
ca- that
Ben
video.
Askren says we never went to the moon.
I
It's
said
on the
that. I
Bleacher
said that
Report.
video is fake.
No, the video is real. That's from television.
Okay, the video. That guy standing up like that, he got help somehow.
Yeah, well,
you can't stand up like that.
Very well, he could have been on wires. It could have
Yes.
been that they were using that to simulate what it would be like. Because they definitely filmed a lot of simulations. They did a lot of that because they wanted to prepare the astronauts. It's entirely possible that some of those simulations got passed off as being an actual video of them on the moon.
Sure.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
Or they faked the whole fucking thing. I wasn't there.
So,
I don't know.
so
I was
actually,
only 2.
In Fight Companion, Eddie Bravo on global control.
There's another question.
Okay.
If, let's say Donald Trump just said, I'm going to fucking make an announcement. We're going to have one comedy tour, and just one, and they wanted to put you guys in the comedy tour, and Trump said, we can
What
fill
are you
stadiums.
talking about?
Would you do it?
Why
Would you jump
I
on
do
it?
that? I
No?
don't do anything for anybody like that.
No?
No, I'm not doing any shows for. Why would?
No, to like as the first shows, this is going to break down the barriers for comedy shows. Donald Trump
No.
allows
No,
you.
I
He's
give my
giving
own
you.
show.
He's
Me and
giving you
Callan
the
are
freedom.
doing it. Me and Callan are doing it.
We're on the road. You guys are doing it. Would you
I
do
don't
it?
need to be given the fucking freedom that we
You
already
can't just do a
had.
concert right now. No, he
They
said,
need
I'm
to-
going to allow you. Donald
When-
Trump said, I'm going to allow you this one tour. Full stadiums, one tour. Joe's not in. Are you in?
Joe's not
I
in.
want
Are
to be
you
able
in?
to breathe underwater too.
Are you in? Are you in?
Yeah, man. Well, me and Brian
I
are
would
doing
fucking
it.
do it.
Can I bring my silverware
Brian and I
knife?
are doing it.
Can I bring my silverware knife?
Look how Brian tucks his knife right
I'm
next
sorry.
to his
That would
cock.
be the
This is
greatest
sexy as
tour
fuck.
ever, dude.
Look.
Donald
Look.
Trump approved.
Watch this,
You guys
ready?
can fill stadiums.
Watch this.
How crazy would that be?
Hey, bro.
What's up?
Is there a problem? That's fucking
I like
sexy.
your.
That's pretty cool. Your
I
jeans
like
are so tight.
I like your pizzeria worker tank top underneath your t-shirt.
Shut up, Joe. That's my secret. I don't
That
like people
pizzeria worker tank top.
Yeah, I like your Old Navy Masters Division top.
I was in my own private
So
gym
cool.
wearing a tank top, and I was embarrassed.
You were.
My own private gym, working out by myself with
Like,
a tank
what the
top.
fuck
I,
am I
own,
doing?
I, own one,
embarrassed.
I own one tank top. Is that old? It's that old fucking
Abbott
Federal-
Kenny?
Abbott Kenny. I
Yeah.
love that. Those are
Abbott
great
Kenny
tank
fuck
tops.
You guys
great.
follow Donald Trump Jr.?
No.
You guys don't follow Donald Trump Jr.?
Eddie,
What?
Hey, you're changing the
Please.
subject.
We're
Well,
trying
we're-
to- we're trying to steer
I
this
thought
back
for
into
sure.
being fun.
No, I thought for sure you guys followed him.
No.
You should.
Oh, dude.
On Instagram, follow Donald
tell you what
Trump.
needs
He's
to-
so gangster. The shit he posted today, oh my
Yeah, he
motherfucking
trolls
God.
him.
Dude,
He's a beast.
He's a fucking beast on the internet. Holy shit. Follow Donald
Hey,
Trump's
didn't he
son.
post something crazy about Joe Biden? Like some meme
Mm-hmm.
of Joe Biden after a while, pedophile, see you later, alligator.
Yeah, he does all that shit.
Something like that.
Yeah, he goes hard.
Yeah,
But
he goes
that was-
hard.
Yeah,
that was
I
one
see
like,
him. I don't
whoa.
follow him, though.
Yeah.
But that's a crazy thing to even
When your dad's
joke
the
around.
president?
That's why I
Yeah.
brought it up.
Though,
Like, that's
that's-
savage.
that's a
That's savage.
But it's crazy that we're at this point where we were talking. I was with Bridget Fetisi yesterday, and she was talking about this congresswoman. Was it? What did she do? Representative, the lady who said "fuck Trump" or "fuck Elon Musk,"
Fuck
rather.
Elon Musk. Yeah, she
Fuck
said,
Elon Musk?
She
Who said
no
that?
one would pay
I'll
attention
fuck her
to
up.
her if she said what she should say. So she just went with like the crazy statement. That's
But,
what her.
but what we found fascinating yesterday, we were talking. We were like, imagine at any other time people saying something like that. Like, no one would ever say, fuck Ronald Reagan.
No, you can't do that.
No one would say, no congressperson or senator or representative, no representative would ever get on a public forum like Twitter.
Never.
And write, fuck
Barack
Obama.
But
That's so
listen,
crazy.
Listen, but when you have the fake stream media for the last 3 years trying
thought
to
it was
destroy.
lamestream.
It's fake stream.
You can't have too many different nicknames.
Fake stream. Dude, if you had, dude,
I'm
if you
always
would,
suspicious
Joe,
of people trying to reinvent themselves with new nicknames.
Joe, if the fake stream media decided to attack you and smear you and fucking connect you with all this
they
crazy
certainly
shit,
will after this podcast.
No, if they
We're
did,
planning on doing it
if
already,
they
Eddie.
did. You would come at them with a
Jesus
fucking
Christ,
vengeance,
Eddie.
dude. That's what's going
Can't
on.
we all just be friends?
Dude, I'm just stating facts.
You're kind of aggressive right now. Hey, boys, how long before the
You know what I'm
store
talking
and the
about?
improv and factory
Dude, the
open?
fake stream media has been crushing Donald Trump, trying to ruin his life and the lives of his family.
This is good, though.
Since day one. Of course he's like that. They go,
okay.
I know people that are like, I hate him. Why does he have to be such an asshole? He's such an asshole. I'm like, dude, they're trying to ruin him on a daily basis. You put on, every day I take a shit, I put on my phone, and there's a headline, Trump is a fucking asshole. Every fucking day I take a shit.
Hey,
It's
B,
the same one. Trump is a
reading
fucking
that.
asshole. Every
Eddie,
day.
You're shouting too loud.
We
Eddie.
can't do it like this.
You're talking too loud.
Okay.
I get it.
I know people hate it.
get
People
your
hate it.
No,
People
it's
hate
we. We can't fucking do anything. We're just sitting here hearing you yelling about Trump. I want to watch some fights.
Stating
You
facts.
can't just. It's your opinion.
That's a fact what I just said.
Okay.
I said facts.
But
FAX.
you're coming in hard in the paint, and I'm feeling a little sensitive today.
Okay. You're still a little blue.
You're so
I get it.
male.
You're still a little blue. You're
I
not all red yet.
understand-
You're
I
coming
understand
though.
you're
Little by
passionate
little,
about it.
inch by inch.
Hey, someone answer my
Inch by
question.
inch. We're in the New World Order right now. Everybody should have a little fucking passion about this.
I'm in the
We're
middle.
in the New World Order right now.
Episode number 2009. Joe Rogan and Duncan Trussell expose New World Order ideas.
Our leaders are human, and humans are culpable and hackable, and it's easier to invade a country or take over a country by just control the leader, you control the country. So there's clearly a pressure there. There's obviously people who would love to do that and probably would try, and have probably succeeded a few times, meaning that our understanding of democracy as like the president represents the people, it's like totally wrong. That in fact, it's potentially someone being controlled by people you'll never meet or maybe never even knew existed. Ugh,
Yeah.
it's creepy. That can't be true.
Well, it's got to be true. Because if it was, they would never, if you had an enormous organization that controls everything, you control everything in the country, would you really let a new person just run it every 4 years in whatever way they like?
Right.
Wouldn't you, if you're there forever, you're there forever. You're not there for 4 years.
Yeah.
You're running the various agencies, and like, wouldn't you make sure over time that you secured enough control that the president really is just sort of a figurehead?
Joe, I am a doctor, and I'm sorry, but it seems like you're
Is this misinformation?
yeah.
Malinformation?
Malinformation's put the thing up. Say this was fact checked and is wrong. Because to me, it feels like, you're like implying that the president of the United States, past presidents, were controlled by secret groups or, I don't know, corporations or something.
That sounds crazy.
Well, it's preposterous. It's
we have a
preposterous.
democracy. That's not even possible.
Nobody on this planet would ever want to control the United States without having to invade it. Nobody would ever want to do that or try to do that or succeed in doing that. God damn, man.
You definitely couldn't do it with money.
No. Presidents don't like money.
No, they generally shy away from it.
Most of them are dead broke, even when they're in there in the White House. Like, like they're like dead fucking broke.
That's why Bill Clinton ate McDonald's.
Every day. People had to loan him money and shit, dude. He would get his car booted and couldn't afford to get the boot off. Yeah, this is why all of our American politicians are like
They're
you know,
paupers when they get out.
Middle income.
Isn't it wild how much they actually make? I mean, it's an insane amount of money. When you look at how much money they get after they get out of the White House.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Like, wow.
How'd you make that much money? You just got back into business?
Yeah.
You weren't in business at all, and
jump back into that housekeeping business.
Now you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That's kind of crazy.
You know, just some. You know, actually, I have a blind investor. I have what do they call it, where they don't know the investments being made. Like, I just happen to have like a really good business dude who like invested the $10,000 I saved up before I became president, and it turned into millions.
The most transparent one is speaking fees, because speaking fees are a way that you can give people money. You can just give them money, and they perform a thing. They talk, and it can be the most uninspired, nonsensical horseshit talk. It doesn't matter. They're going to get $500,000.
That's right. That's right.
That's just a normal amount of money that you get, and then you go here and you make it over there, and you go here and you make it over, and you collect from everybody. So you have some sort of financial arrangement, but that financial arrangement is about speaking fees.
See, this is what I'm talking about, man. This is the liminal or subliminal part of the human experience. What you're talking about right now is upsetting to people. But also, a lot of people will say, don't even talk, you're not even supposed to say that. Like, and even though it's true, like, even though it's in plain sight, trackable, traceable, precedent for it in the past, not even that, like, astounding. You are supposed to like rest in this strange dream world where human beings experiencing some of the most power you can have in the world don't go a little or totally or completely insane, or don't get hijacked, or don't get like, we're supposed to pretend that doesn't happen.
Right.
When you look at the president, look, like, does Biden seem like he'd be hard to trick?
Would you even have to trick him, though?
Maybe.
I mean, I think it's so hard to know what goes on behind those closed doors when they're making decisions.
Don't want to know.
See, they sent an extra how many $1 billion they accidentally sent to Ukraine? 6.2 billion. It was an accident. They accidentally
sent it?
Yeah, 6.2 more than they were supposed to.
Wow.
But then they just sent some more.
That must have been a rough phone call to ask for
Accounting
it
error
back.
provides an extra 6.2 billion for Ukraine military aid. Whoops. Sorry.
Hey, what's up? It's Duncan. Look, I kind of fucked up. I was on a little bit of ketamine when I was doing that. The transaction. So can you send back the $62 billion? $6.2 billion I actually sent to you. Can you just send it back? Because you'd think, if it's a clerical error, right? Then they're going to be like, oh, shit, I didn't notice the $6.2 billion going into my account. That's how rich I am. I'll send back. There's so much money. Because, like, at some point, it's just, I don't even know what it is. Just billions, lots of billions. Yeah, it's pretty weird.
The Pentagon said Tuesday that it overestimated the value of the weapons it sent to Ukraine by $6.2 billion over the past 2 years, about double early estimates, resulting in a surplus that will be used for future security packages. Oh, don't worry about it. Just use it for future security packages.
It's a security package.
Yeah, it's a surplus.
What do we know, man?
Security packages.
We don't know shit. And
that's just saying we're going to keep sending money
it's a
forever and ever and ever.
It's a security package.
It'll just go back into the pot of money that we have allocated.
That's a big fucking
for the
pot.
future Pentagon stock drawdowns. Look at that. Future Pentagon stock drawdowns. Ew. Why does that sound like they're playing a game? You know what I'm saying? That's like sounds like a game.
Carlin's got the ultimate bit on it, man. Like the evolution of war language, it used to be called shell shocked, but then they changed it.
Yeah.
Like it's the whatever that language is inevitably confusing.
It's confusing, and it's also it has this air of authority to it, like the judge wearing the robe.
Yeah. Hypnotic.
Yeah, by talking about it that way, stock drawdowns and Pentagon allocated
I don't know if
money.
this is the same money, but in May they found $3 billion more back then. So I don't know if that's 10